She was fired after the Mafia boss's fiancé accused her of stealing food, until he saw the footage. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. The elegant chandelier above cast a soft glow over the lavish banquet hall. Guests were mingling. Their laughter and chatter filled the air as waiters glided through the crowd, carrying trays of gourmet, hors d'oeuvres, and fine wine. Everything was perfect, just as it should be at a high-profile event like this one. But amidst the glitz and glamour, there was one person who felt like she didn't belong. Emily, a young woman in her late 20s, had been working at the lavish mansion of Mafia boss Dominic for several months. As a personal assistant and housekeeper, she had learned to stay out of the way, to remain invisible, to do her job quietly and without drawing attention to herself. That was until tonight. As she passed through the kitchen, carrying a tray of appetizers, she noticed a commotion in the dining room. The Mafia boss's fiancée, a tall and icy woman named Victoria, was speaking in a raised voice. "I saw you, Emily. I saw you taking food when you thought no one was looking." Victoria's voice sliced through the chatter of the guests like a knife. Emily froze. Her heart raced, her palms became clammy, and her stomach churned. She had been caught, except she hadn't done anything wrong. "Excuse me," Emily stammered, barely able to breathe as the eyes of the room turned toward her. Victoria's face was a mask of disdain as she pointed directly at Emily, her finger trembling with barely contained anger. "You heard me. You're nothing but a thief. I saw you sneak food from the buffet. If you think you can get away with it, think again." Emily's face flushed red as she struggled to comprehend the situation. She had simply taken a small portion of the leftover food after serving the guests, a gesture of kindness toward herself after hours of hard work. But in Victoria's eyes, it was theft. The guests stared, some with sympathy, others with judgment. "That's enough, Victoria," one of the men in the crowd said. He was a familiar face, one of Dominic's associates, but his voice lacked the usual confidence. Victoria's cold gaze silenced him. "No, I will not let her get away with this," she spat, her words sharp as daggers. Emily could feel her legs wobble beneath her. The humiliation was overwhelming. Before she could say anything, Victoria snapped her fingers at one of the security guards. "Get her out of here," she ordered, "and fire her immediately." Emily's breath caught in her throat as the guard stepped forward. She had never felt so small, so powerless. This was it. Her job, her only source of income, was gone in an instant. But just as the security guard was about to escort her out, the heavy wooden doors to the dining room creaked open, and in walked Dominic. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the man whose reputation alone could bring fear to even the most hardened criminals. He was tall, imposing, with sharp features that seemed carved from stone. His eyes scanned the room, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Victoria's face twisted in annoyance as she caught sight of him. "Dominic, finally. Your maid was just caught stealing food. I think it's time we show her the door." Dominic's gaze shifted from Victoria to Emily, his expression unreadable. "Stealing food," he repeated, his voice low and controlled. "Is that what happened, Emily?" Emily opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Victoria interrupted again. "I saw it with my own eyes. She's lying, Dominic. She's been nothing but trouble since she started working here." Dominic stood silently for a moment, his eyes never leaving Emily's face. Then, without a word, he turned to one of the staff members standing near the back of the room. "Show me the footage," he said, his voice icy and calm. The staff member nodded and quickly disappeared, returning moments later with a tablet in hand. Dominic watched as the footage of the kitchen played, showing Emily calmly taking a small plate of leftover food and sitting down at the counter. There was no stealing, no sneaking, no malice, just a woman trying to take a moment to rest. Dominic's eyes narrowed as he watched the video. When it finished, he turned back to Victoria, his gaze colder than ever. "This is the footage you're basing your accusation on?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Victoria didn't answer. Instead, she crossed her arms and glared at Emily. "It's clear she's lying, Dominic. Enough, Dominic interrupted, his voice now firm. He looked at Emily, his expression softening ever so slightly. You're not fired, Emily. As for you, Victoria, he said, turning back to his fiancée, you'll leave. Now. The room erupted in stunned silence as Victoria's face went pale. She opened her mouth to protest, but Dominic's cold glare silenced her. You're no longer welcome here. You've disrespected this household, and you've disrespected her. Leave. Now. The guests murmured in shock as Victoria stormed out of the room, her heels clicking angrily against the marble floors. Emily, still in shock, stood frozen, not sure if she had just imagined everything. Are you okay? Dominic's voice broke through the chaos, and for the first time, his eyes seemed to soften as they met hers. Yes, she whispered, still trying to process what had just happened. Thank you. Dominic nodded, his expression unreadable. We'll get this sorted out. Just remember, never let anyone make you feel less than what you are. You've done nothing wrong. As the room began to settle, Emily could hardly believe the turn her life had just taken. From the brink of losing everything to being defended by the very man whose fiancé had accused her. It was a strange twist of fate, one that would change everything. But for now, she could only stand there, in the middle of the grand hall, trying to wrap her mind around it all. The air in the mansion was thick with tension, still rippling from the confrontation moments ago. Emily stood frozen in the grand hallway, her heart racing, her mind struggling to process everything that had just happened. She had been accused of stealing food, publicly humiliated, and about to lose her job. But then Dominic DeLuca, the notorious Mafia boss, had intervened. He had watched the footage, seen the truth, and defended her. Now, here she was, caught between disbelief and gratitude, unsure of what to do next. Are you okay? Dominic's voice broke through her thoughts. She looked up to meet his piercing gaze. There was something in his eyes, a softening that caught her off guard. She nodded, her throat tight. Yes, I'm fine. Dominic studied her for a moment before speaking again. I know that was a lot to take in. I'm sorry you had to go through that. His words were sincere, and Emily could feel the weight of them. This was the Mafia boss who commanded respect, who ruled his empire with an iron fist. But here he was, offering her understanding and support. You shouldn't have had to step in like that, Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I appreciate it. More than I can say. Dominic's lips quirked into a small smile. Sometimes, people need to be reminded that they're not as powerless as they think. He paused, his expression turning serious. I don't tolerate anyone being mistreated under my roof, especially not someone who's done nothing wrong. Emily couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. Relief, confusion, and something else she couldn't quite name. This wasn't just about her job anymore. It felt like something more had shifted between them, something unspoken, but undeniable. You were going to fire me, weren't you? Emily asked, her voice trembling slightly. Dominic gave a slight shrug. I wasn't sure what to think at first, but when I saw the footage, it was clear you were just caught in a bad situation. Victoria, she let her own issues cloud her judgment. He sighed, rubbing his temples as if the entire situation was a headache he hadn't anticipated. I'll be having a conversation with her about her behavior. It's not acceptable to treat people that way, especially someone who works hard. Emily nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude. Thank you, she said again, her voice steadier now. Dominic gave a short nod and then glanced around the room, his usual commanding presence returning. For now, go home. I'll have someone from the staff reach out to you in the morning to clear things up. He hesitated for a moment, then added, We'll make sure you're properly taken care of. Emily blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his tone. I don't even know what to say. Then don't say anything, he replied, his gaze softening just slightly. Just know that you're not alone in this. Emily stood there for a moment, trying to process everything. Her world had just turned upside down in a matter of hours. And yet, despite the chaos, there was a strange comfort in knowing that someone, Dominic, of all people, had her back. I'll see you tomorrow, she said, finally finding her voice again. Dominic nodded, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that made Emily pause before she turned to leave. As she made her way toward the door, her thoughts raced. What was it about this situation that made her feel so different? She had never imagined her life would intersect with Dominic DeLuca's in such a personal way, but here she was, the center of a conflict that was much bigger than herself. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of what would become a turning point in her life. She walked out of the mansion, her mind still reeling from the events of the night, but with a strange sense of hope creeping in. Something had changed. She wasn't sure what it was, but she knew it wasn't just about a job anymore. The next morning, Emily received a call from Dominic's personal assistant, informing her that she was reinstated and that an official apology would be issued to her. She was stunned, but grateful. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Victoria was removed from the household, and Emily's position was not only secured, but she was also given a raise in recognition of the ordeal she had endured. It was more than she had ever hoped for, and yet, something felt different. It wasn't just the money or the position. It was the respect, the feeling that she mattered. As she worked in the mansion, Emily noticed Dominic's occasional glances her way, moments where their eyes met, and she couldn't help but feel a growing tension. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. And in the quiet moments between their interactions, Emily began to realize something. The man who had once seemed so untouchable, so far removed from her world, had become someone she was starting to understand. Dominic was powerful, yes, but he was also human, with his own struggles and pain. And somehow, in the midst of all of this chaos, their worlds had collided in a way neither of them could have predicted. Emily didn't know where this would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same again. It had been 3 days since the incident at the mansion, and life had somehow started to return to normal. Emily had settled back into her routine, though the events of the past week still lingered in her mind. The confrontation with Victoria, Dominic's unexpected defense, and the way he had made it clear that she mattered, had all left an imprint on her. It was strange. She had never imagined her life would take such a turn. But the most unsettling part was the way she found herself thinking about Dominic more than she should. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She was still processing her new role within the mansion. The apology from Dominic had been genuine, and she had been reinstated with a new title, head housekeeper. It was more responsibility, more respect, and more recognition than she had ever expected. But even with the change in her position, something felt different. She couldn't help but notice Dominic's presence more often than usual. In the halls, in the garden, and even in the staff quarters, there were moments when their eyes would meet, and for just a second, she would see something there, a flicker of something deeper. On the morning of the 4th day, Emily found herself walking through the grand hallway, headed to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for the staff. As she passed by the study, she saw Dominic standing by the window, looking out at the garden. He was dressed casually today, in a black shirt and dark jeans, his sleeves rolled up. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and a strange silence passed between them. "Morning," he said, his voice low but warm. Emily froze for a split second before replying. "Good morning, Mr. DeLuca." "Dominic," he corrected, his gaze still fixed on hers. There was something in the way he said it, something that made her heart skip a beat. "I've been meaning to talk to you." Emily nodded, unsure of what to expect. "Sure, what about?" Dominic stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "I wanted to thank you for the way you handled everything with Victoria," he said, his tone steady but sincere. "It wasn't right what happened, and I'm glad you didn't let her get away with it." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I just did what anyone would do." Dominic smiled, but there was something in his eyes that made her feel as if she had just done something important. "Not everyone would. You did the right thing. I'm impressed." Emily shifted awkwardly, not used to receiving praise, especially from someone like him. I don't want to make any trouble. I'm just here to work." Dominic's expression softened. "You don't have to worry about that. You're not just here to work. You've earned my trust. And I think you deserve more than what you've been getting." His words caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" Dominic paused, then stepped closer. "I've been thinking about your situation. You've been through a lot. I've seen the way you handle things, and I want to offer you more responsibility, more freedom. You've proven yourself." Emily's heart raced. More responsibility? More freedom? What was he saying? Before she could respond, Dominic continued. "I want you to take on a larger role here. I've already made arrangements. Starting today, you'll be overseeing more of the operations around the mansion. You'll be working directly with me and my team to manage the staff, the scheduling, everything. I trust you. Emily's mind was reeling. She had only just been promoted to head housekeeper, and now this? She couldn't understand why he was offering her this much responsibility, this much trust. Are you sure? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Dominic nodded. I'm sure. You've earned it, Emily. You've shown integrity, and you've handled yourself with grace under pressure. I don't want you to feel like just another employee. You're part of this family now, and I want you to feel like you belong. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. Emily had never imagined she would be in this position, working alongside someone as powerful as Dominic, someone who not only commanded respect, but also seemed to genuinely care. Thank you, she whispered, unsure of what else to say. Dominic gave a small nod, his eyes never leaving hers. You're welcome. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. There was a long silence as they stood there, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Finally, Dominic broke the silence. I'll have someone brief you on the details later. But for now, I need you to know that I've got your back. Emily swallowed, feeling overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. I'll do my best, she said quietly. I know you will. Dominic's voice was filled with quiet assurance as he stepped back. You'll do great. I have no doubt. As he turned and walked away, Emily stood there for a moment, processing everything that had just happened. Her world had shifted once again. What started as a simple job had now become something much bigger, and she wasn't sure where this path would lead. But one thing was clear. Dominic DeLuca was not just the Mafia boss she had thought he was. There was something more to him, something that made Emily feel like she was no longer just a bystander in her own life. And whether she was ready or not, she was about to be pulled deeper into his world. The following days felt like a whirlwind for Emily. She had been thrust into a new role, one that came with both immense responsibility and a sense of pride she had never experienced before. As head housekeeper, her duties expanded beyond what she had originally signed up for. She was now managing the staff, overseeing operations, and even working closely with Dominic and his team. While the increased workload was overwhelming, there was something satisfying about being trusted with such an important role. Dominic's confidence in her was both a weight and a motivation. But it wasn't just the job that was on her mind. The more time she spent in the mansion, the more she found herself noticing things, small, quiet moments when their eyes would meet across a room, or when Dominic's usual cold demeanor would soften for just a fraction of a second. It was strange. She had never imagined she would be in this position, working directly alongside someone as powerful as Dominic. And yet, despite everything, there was something in him that called to her. As the days passed, Emily began to feel the tension between them building. It wasn't just about the work. There were moments of silent understanding, moments when she felt like they were connecting in a way that went beyond their professional relationship. She tried to push those thoughts aside. After all, Dominic was a Mafia boss. He had his world, and she had hers. The two should never collide. But despite her efforts to ignore it, the attraction was undeniable. Then, one evening, things changed. Emily had stayed late, catching up on some work. The mansion was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning. As she finished organizing some files in the office, she heard a knock on the door. Come in, she called, not looking up. The door creaked open, and she looked up to see Dominic standing in the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but there was something about his posture that made her stomach tighten. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said, his voice low. Emily shook her head. Not at all. I was just finishing up some work. Dominic stepped inside, closing the door behind him. There was a pause as he took in the room, his gaze settling on her. I've been thinking, he began, his voice steady, about how things have been going here. Emily looked up from her work, her heart beginning to race. I hope everything's going well, she said, a little unsure of where this conversation was headed. It's been more than good, Dominic replied. He stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. It's been impressive. I've watched you handle everything with grace, even when things weren't easy. You've earned more than just my respect, Emily. You've earned my trust. The words hung in the air, and Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected this. Dominic had always been reserved, distant. He was a man of few words, especially when it came to personal matters. But now, there was something in his tone that felt different. There was sincerity there, something raw and genuine. I don't know what to say, Emily stammered, feeling the weight of his words sink in. Dominic took another step closer, his gaze never wavering. You don't need to say anything, he said softly. But I think it's time we talk about something else. His voice was quieter now, more intimate. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she looked up at him, trying to make sense of the sudden shift. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I think you know, he replied. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The touch was unexpected, but it sent a jolt through her, making her pulse quicken. I'm not just your boss, Emily. I've watched you for longer than you think. You've done more than just work here. You've become someone important to me, and I think you feel it too. Emily felt her breath catch as his words hit her like a wave. She had known something was changing between them, but hearing it spoken out loud was something else entirely. She had always kept her distance, kept her emotions in check. But now, standing here with Dominic, everything felt different. She could feel the intensity of his gaze, the heat radiating from his touch. And in that moment, she realized that whatever this was between them, it was real. She wasn't sure where it would lead, but she knew it was something she couldn't ignore. I don't know what to say, Emily repeated, her voice trembling slightly. Dominic smiled softly, his thumb brushing over her hand. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you. There was a long silence between them, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Dominic stepped back, his hand lingering for a moment before he released her. We'll talk more later, he said, his voice quieter now. But for now, get some rest. You've earned it. Emily stood there for a moment, her mind spinning, trying to process everything. She had never imagined that her life would take this turn, that she would become someone who mattered to Dominic DeLuca. And yet, here she was, standing in the middle of his world, unsure of what was next, but knowing one thing for sure. Things were never going to be the same again. It had been several days since Dominic had made his intentions clear, and while Emily tried to focus on her work, the tension between them only seemed to grow. It was a strange mix of professional respect and something else, something unspoken, something that lingered in the air every time they crossed paths. She couldn't deny it any longer. The attraction was undeniable, but as much as she wanted to ignore it, she couldn't help but be drawn to him. Dominic DeLuca, the Mafia boss who had so easily dismissed the world's expectations, who had shown a side of himself that no one else saw. He was powerful, cold, and ruthless, but there was something in the way he treated her that made her question everything. She had spent most of her life staying out of trouble, staying unnoticed. But now here she was, caught in the web of a world she had never imagined. Every moment with Dominic felt like a step deeper into that world, a world where trust and loyalty were everything. And yet, she couldn't help but feel like she was walking a fine line between danger and desire. As she worked late one evening, making her rounds through the mansion, she found herself in the grand study. She had just finished overseeing some details for the evening's staff schedule when she heard the door open behind her. She turned to see Dominic standing there, his presence as imposing as always. He wasn't in his usual suit tonight. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a black t-shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal the tattoos on his arms. He looked different, more human, almost vulnerable. Emily's heart skipped a beat as their eyes met. I didn't expect to find you still here, he said, his voice low but gentle. I was just finishing up some things, Emily replied, her voice betraying none of the emotions swirling inside her. I didn't realize it was this late. Dominic stepped further into the room, his eyes scanning the space before resting back on her. You work too hard, he said, his tone almost concerned. You deserve to take a break every now and then. Emily shook her head, unsure of how to respond. I'm fine. There's a lot to manage right now. Dominic raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. You're managing it all. I've seen how you've handled everything, and I'm impressed. You're doing more than anyone could expect. Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his praise. It wasn't just about the job. It was the way he made her feel valued, something she had never expected from someone like him. Thank you, she said quietly, unsure of what else to say. Dominic nodded, then looked around the room as if searching for something to say. Emily, he began, his voice taking on a more serious tone. I need to ask you something. Emily's heart raced. She knew it was coming. What's that? He hesitated, his gaze flickering back to her. How would you feel about taking on an even bigger role here? Not just with the staff, but with me, personally? Emily blinked, caught off guard by his words. What do you mean? Dominic stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. You've been more than just an employee to me. I want you to be a part of my team, truly. I've been thinking about this for a while. I trust you, and I believe you have the potential to be even more involved. Emily's mind spun. She had never expected him to say something like this. But I already have so much responsibility. Dominic nodded, understanding her hesitation. I know, but I think you're capable of more. And I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who understands what it means to be loyal. His words were direct, filled with a weight that made Emily pause. Loyalty. The word hung in the air, carrying an unspoken promise. I'm not sure I'm ready for that, she said, her voice soft but firm. Dominic smiled slightly, as if he had expected this response. I'm not asking you to jump into it immediately, but I want you to think about it. You've proven yourself, Emily. You're more than capable of handling whatever comes your way. His words were genuine, and for a moment, Emily felt the walls she had carefully built around her start to crumble. She had always prided herself on keeping a distance, on being the quiet worker in the background. But Dominic had seen something in her that she wasn't sure she even saw in herself. He believed in her, and somehow, that made everything feel different. I'll think about it, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Dominic nodded, his expression softening. That's all I'm asking. He stepped back, giving her space, but before he turned to leave, he paused. You're not alone in this, Emily. Whatever you decide, I've got your back. She stood there, watching him leave, her heart racing. As the door closed behind him, Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she might have a place in Dominic's world. A world she never thought she would be a part of. And now, she couldn't imagine leaving it behind. The following days were filled with a sense of anticipation and uncertainty for Emily. Dominic's offer lingered in her mind, and though she hadn't made a decision, the idea of taking on more responsibility in his world, a world that was so far removed from everything she had known, was both thrilling and terrifying. She had never imagined that her quiet life as a housekeeper would bring her this close to someone like him. The more she worked, the more she saw the power Dominic wielded, how effortlessly he commanded respect, how easily he navigated his empire. It was a world filled with danger and intrigue, yet there was something about it that called to her, something that made her feel like she was meant for more. And then, one evening, everything changed. Emily was in the kitchen, preparing dinner for the staff, when she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to see Dominic standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Emily, he said softly, can we talk? Her heart skipped a beat. There was something in his tone that made her stomach flutter. She nodded, wiping her hands on the towel before walking toward him. Of course. What's on your mind? I've been thinking about our conversation, Dominic began, his voice steady but filled with something she couldn't quite place. And I want to make sure you're comfortable with everything. I don't want to push you into something you're not ready for. His words were genuine, but there was an edge to them that made her feel like there was more he wasn't saying. I'm still processing everything, Emily admitted, looking up at him. It's just, this world is so different from what I've known. Dominic nodded, his gaze softening. I get that, but I believe you have the potential to be a part of it. Not just as an employee, but as someone who is integral to everything I do. He took a step closer, his eyes locking onto hers. I trust you, Emily. I've never trusted anyone the way I trust you. The sincerity in his voice took her by surprise. Emily felt her chest tighten, her heart racing as she struggled to find the right words. I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of responsibility, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dominic reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to decide right now, but I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what you choose. Emily met his gaze, her breath caught in her throat. The distance between them seemed to shrink, the tension between them palpable. She could feel the weight of his words, the sincerity in his touch, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a place in his world. I'll think about it, she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. Dominic nodded, his expression unreadable. That's all I'm asking. Take your time. He paused for a moment before adding. But know this, Whatever you decide, I'll always have your back. Emily couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude wash over her. It wasn't just about the job or the power or the influence he held. It was about the way he saw her, the way he believed in her when she didn't even believe in herself. Thank you, she whispered. Dominic smiled, a small, reassuring smile that made her heart flutter. You're welcome. I'll leave you to your work for now. As he turned to leave, Emily stood there, frozen, her mind spinning. She had always kept her distance from the world of power and wealth, but now she was standing at the edge of it, unsure of which direction to take. She knew one thing for sure. Her life was changing, and there was no going back. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Emily threw herself into her work, determined to prove herself. She handled the staff with confidence, managed the schedules efficiently, and became more and more involved in the operations of the mansion. But every time Dominic was near, the air around them seemed to crackle with tension. She couldn't deny the attraction she felt, nor the undeniable pull toward him. It was becoming harder and harder to keep things professional. And yet, she knew she had to. She wasn't sure where this was leading, but she knew she couldn't afford to get too close. As the days wore on, the tension continued to build. One evening, after the rest of the staff had gone to bed, Emily found herself standing alone in the hallway, her thoughts heavy with uncertainty. The mansion was silent, the only sound the soft creak of the old wooden floors beneath her feet. She had just finished organizing the last of the paperwork when she heard the door to the study open. She looked up to see Dominic walking toward her. He was alone, his usual composure replaced by something softer, something more vulnerable. I didn't expect to see you here so late, he said, his voice low. Emily felt a rush of warmth flood her chest. I was just finishing up some work. Dominic nodded, stepping closer. You've been working hard, Emily. I admire your dedication. She didn't know how to respond to that. His praise meant more to her than she cared to admit. Thank you, she finally said. There was a long silence between them, the tension palpable. And then, Dominic spoke again, his voice softer now. You're not just doing this job because it's your duty. You're doing it because you care. I can see that. Emily's heart skipped a beat. His words felt like an unspoken admission, like he was seeing her in a way no one else ever had. I care about this place, she said quietly, meeting his gaze. I care about doing it right. Dominic's expression softened as he stepped closer. You're doing it more than right, Emily. You're making a difference. As he reached out, his hand brushing gently against hers, she felt the spark between them ignite once again. This time, she didn't pull away. She allowed herself to feel it, to feel him. The world outside the mansion seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in the quiet, dimly lit hallway. She wasn't sure where this was leading, but for the first time, she didn't mind the uncertainty. She was ready to face whatever came next, with Dominic by her side. The following days at the mansion were filled with a sense of uncertainty and change for Emily. The moment she had shared with Dominic in the hallway still lingered in her mind, the touch of his hand sending a wave of emotions she wasn't quite ready to deal with. It was like everything had shifted in the blink of an eye. She had always kept herself distant from the world of power and wealth, but now, with every passing moment, she found herself becoming more and more entwined in that world, in his world. The next morning, as Emily walked into the kitchen to begin her usual rounds, she noticed something different. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy that hadn't been there before. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Her mind was still, reeling from the conversation with Dominic the night before, and she couldn't stop thinking about the implications of what he had said. Was it possible that he really meant what he had said? Was she truly ready to step into this new world? Just as she was lost in thought, the door to the kitchen opened, and there he was. Dominic. His presence filled the room, commanding attention without a word. His gaze met hers, and for a moment, it felt like the world outside the mansion disappeared. Morning, Emily, he said, his voice calm and steady. But there was something in the way he said her name that made her heart race. Good morning, Dominic, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I hope I'm not interrupting. No, not at all, Emily said quickly, but she couldn't deny the nervousness in her voice. Dominic took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I've been thinking, he began, his tone much softer than usual, about what we talked about the other night. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The conversation they had shared had been personal, unexpected, and more intense than anything she had ever experienced. "I know you said you needed time," he continued, "but I want to make sure you know how serious I am about what I said." Emily looked at him, trying to gauge his intentions. She wasn't sure what to say, but she knew that whatever this was, it was becoming harder to ignore. "Dominic, she started, but he interrupted her gently. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he said, "but I want you to know that I trust you. I trust you more than I've trusted anyone in a long time. I'm not asking you to jump into anything, but I want you to think about the future, about what we could accomplish together." His words were more than just an offer. They were a promise, a glimpse into a future she had never imagined. Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. She had always kept her emotions in check, but Dominic's words were slowly breaking down the walls she had built around herself. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that," she whispered, though part of her felt as if she was lying. "I don't know what this is, or where it's going." Dominic took another step forward, his eyes softening. "I understand that. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but I want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The intensity in his voice left her breathless. There was something in his words that made her feel like she was standing on the edge of something new, something uncertain but promising. She had spent so long trying to keep herself removed from everything, trying to protect herself from the dangers of this world, but now, with Dominic standing in front of her, offering her a place by his side, she wasn't sure if she could resist anymore. "I just don't want to make the wrong decision," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose myself in this." Dominic reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was gentle, reassuring. "You won't lose yourself, Emily. I won't let that happen. I'm offering you a chance, but it's up to you to decide what you want." Emily met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. She could feel her heart beating faster, her mind racing with the possibilities. She wasn't sure if she was ready for everything that came with being a part of Dominic's world, but one thing was clear. She couldn't ignore the pull between them any longer. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady this time. "I just need time to process everything." Dominic smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As he turned to leave, Emily stood there for a moment, watching him go. The mansion suddenly felt emptier, quieter, without him in it. She had always been content to stay in the background, to remain invisible, but now, she couldn't help but wonder if that was possible anymore. Dominic had seen something in her, something she hadn't even seen in herself. And as much as she wanted to hold on to her old life, to the safety of the shadows, she realized that it might be time to step into the light. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but for the first time, she felt ready to take that first step. The question was, could she trust herself to walk it? The following week, Emily continued to find herself torn between the path she had known and the one Dominic was offering her. Each day, the tension grew a little more, the pull between them becoming harder to ignore. She had been working tirelessly, taking on more responsibility than ever before, but no matter how much she buried herself in the tasks at hand, her mind always drifted back to him, to Dominic. She had tried to keep it professional, focusing on her duties, but there were moments when she couldn't help but wonder what this all meant. What did he really want from her? And more importantly, what did she want from him? It had been nearly a week since their last conversation, and though she had told herself she needed more time to think, she couldn't deny that something had changed. She had always kept her emotions in check, never allowing herself to get too close to anyone. But Dominic made that seem impossible. It wasn't just his power or his influence, it was the way he saw her. The way he believed in her when no one else did. As the evening approached, Emily found herself finishing up her rounds in the grand hallway of the mansion. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the staff preparing for the night's events were the only things breaking the silence. She was about to head to her office when she heard footsteps approaching. She turned to find Dominic standing at the end of the hallway, his dark eyes fixed on her. He was dressed casually, a black leather jacket thrown over a plain t-shirt, his expression unreadable. "Emily," he called out softly, his voice carrying through the empty hallway. "Dominic," she replied, trying to keep her tone steady. "I thought you were busy tonight." He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I was," he said, his voice low, "but I needed to talk to you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. It was the same feeling she had every time he was near, This mix of excitement and fear, of longing and doubt. "What about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dominic didn't answer right away. He simply walked closer, closing the distance between them until they were standing mere inches apart. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell the faint hint of his cologne, a deep, smoky scent that seemed to envelop her senses. "I've been thinking about what we discussed," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I know you're still unsure about everything, and I understand that. But I need you to understand something, Emily. What I'm offering you isn't just a position. It's a partnership." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emily didn't know how to respond. A partnership. The word felt heavy, loaded with meaning. She had spent so much of her life trying to remain invisible, trying to keep her head down and stay out of trouble. But with Dominic, she was starting to realize that was no longer an option. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," she admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "I've never been in a world like this before. It's overwhelming." Dominic's gaze softened, and he stepped even closer, his hand brushing against hers. The touch sent a shiver down her spine. "You don't have to be ready," he said gently. "I'm not asking you to change who you are. I just want you to trust me. Trust that together, we can make this work." His words were sincere, and for a moment, Emily felt herself drawn in by them. There was something about his presence, about the way he spoke, that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could do this. She could step into this world. "What happens if I say yes?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dominic paused, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he reached out, his fingers gently touching her chin, lifting her gaze to meet his. "If you say yes, Emily, everything changes. But I'm not going to rush you. This is your decision, and I respect that." Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had always been the cautious one, the one who thought things through before taking risks. But this wasn't just any decision. This was about her future, about stepping into a world that was far bigger than anything she had ever known. And with Dominic's words hanging in the air, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was ready for that change. "I need time to think," she said, her voice steady now. Dominic nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Take all the time you need," he said. "But just know that whatever you decide, I'll be here." His words, simple yet filled with weight, left her standing there, watching him walk away. For the first time, Emily didn't feel the need to rush. She needed to make her decision carefully, to figure out where she truly belonged in all of this. But as she stood in the quiet of the hallway, watching him disappear into the shadows of the mansion, she couldn't deny that something had shifted. And whatever that shift was, it was leading her down a path she could no longer ignore. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of reflection for Emily. She found herself walking the halls of the mansion, her thoughts consumed by the conversation she had shared with Dominic. His words echoed in her mind, a promise of something bigger, something more than she had ever imagined for herself. But even as she felt the pull to step into his world, the uncertainty lingered. Was she ready for everything that came with being close to him? The path he was offering her was one she had never considered. It was a world of power, wealth, and danger, things she had always kept at arm's length. Yet, the more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she truly knew about what her life could be outside of this mansion. It had become a strange mixture of duty, trust, and something more that she couldn't quite put her finger on. She was drawn to him, to Dominic, in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. He was a man who commanded attention wherever he went, a force to be reckoned with in every sense of the word. But it wasn't just his power that captivated her. It was the way he looked at her, as if she mattered. And that was a feeling she had never experienced before. Late one evening, Emily found herself alone in the mansion's library. She had spent the last few hours organizing the staff schedules, preparing for another busy week. The silence of the room was a comfort, the only sound the faint crackle of the fire in the hearth. She had just finished placing a few files on the desk when the door opened. She turned to see Dominic standing in the doorway, his eyes fixed on her. There was something different about him tonight. His expression was unreadable, but there was a softness to his gaze that made her heart race. "Emily," he said softly, stepping into the room. "Can we talk?" Emily nodded, her pulse quickening at the sound of his voice. "Of course." He closed the door behind him and walked over to where she stood. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, neither speaking. Emily could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken words hanging between them. "I've been thinking about everything," Dominic began, his voice low but steady. "About you, about the offer I made." He paused, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know I pushed you to make a decision, but I want you to know that I'm not rushing you. Take all the time you need. But I need to be clear about one thing." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the weight of his words, the seriousness behind them. "What's that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dominic stepped closer, his expression softening. "This isn't just about a job, Emily. This is about more than that. I see something in you. You're not just the woman who runs my household. You're someone I want by my side." His words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she was speechless. She had known there was something between them, but hearing it out loud was a different thing entirely. She had always been cautious, always kept a part of herself hidden, but Dominic had a way of breaking through those walls, making her feel like she was more than just a servant in his world. "I don't know what to say," Emily finally replied, her voice shaky. "I'm not used to this. I don't know what being with you, being a part of your world, would mean." Dominic smiled gently, his hand brushing against her arm. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, but I want you to know that you don't have to go through this alone. Whatever you choose, I'll be here. You have my word." His words, so simple yet filled with so much meaning, made her feel like she had a place in this world, his world. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, and it both terrified and thrilled her. "I'm not ready to make a decision," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't even know what I want." Dominic nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "Take your time. But I want you to know that whatever happens, you're not just an employee to me. You mean more than that." His words sank deep into her chest, and for the first time, Emily allowed herself to truly believe that maybe she could have something more with Dominic. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone in making that decision. Dominic's presence was a constant now, and even though she wasn't sure what it all meant, she knew one thing for sure. Things between them were changing. The question was no longer whether or not she would step into his world. It was whether she was ready to take that first step into the unknown. "I'll think about it," Emily said, her voice steady now. Dominic smiled softly, stepping back. "That's all I ask. But know this, you don't have to do this alone. Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Emily watched him leave the room, her heart still pounding in her chest. As the door clicked shut behind him, she stood there for a moment, lost in thought. She didn't know what the future held, but she was beginning to realize that whatever it would be a future with Dominic, and that thought was both comforting and overwhelming at the same time. The world outside the mansion seemed far away now, and for the first time, Emily felt like she had a place in it, whatever that might mean. The days that followed were a blur for Emily. She spent her time focusing on the tasks Dominic had assigned her, trying to keep her mind off the growing feelings she had for him. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about everything that had been happening between them. There was an undeniable chemistry, something that couldn't be ignored. Every time their eyes met, the air seemed to shift, and Emily couldn't help but feel the pull between them. But the more she tried to push those feelings away, the more they grew. She couldn't keep pretending that she didn't feel something for him. It was becoming harder to avoid the truth. Dominic was more than just her boss. He was a man who had changed her life in ways she didn't fully understand. And as much as she tried to stay focused on her work, she couldn't help but wonder where this was all leading. One evening, as Emily was finishing up her work in the office, the sound of footsteps approached. She looked up to see Dominic standing in the doorway. His usual confident, almost intimidating presence was softened tonight. He was dressed casually, in a black shirt and dark jeans, looking more relaxed than usual. For a moment, they just stood there, staring at each other. "Emily," Dominic said, his voice softer than usual. "Can we talk?" Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Of course," she said, trying to sound calm, though her pulse quickened. He walked into the room and closed the door behind him, standing a few feet away. There was a strange tension in the air, and Emily couldn't quite put her finger on it. She knew this conversation would be different from the others. "I've been thinking," Dominic began, his gaze steady on her. "About everything. About you. And what comes next." Emily's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The conversation she had been avoiding. The one that would determine everything. I know you've been unsure about my offer, he continued, his voice low but steady. But I need you to understand that I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. I want you to take your time. Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and fear. She wasn't ready to make a choice, not yet. But hearing him say it out loud, giving her the space she needed, made the weight on her shoulders feel just a little lighter. Thank you, she said quietly. I don't know where this is going. Dominic took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. That's okay, he said softly. I don't know where it's going either. But what I do know is that I don't want to lose you. Not like this. The words hit Emily like a wave, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. She had spent so long trying to keep her emotions in check, trying to ignore the way she felt about him. But now it was all coming to the surface. She couldn't pretend anymore. I can't promise you anything, she said, her voice trembling slightly. But I don't want to lose this either. What we have here, it's different. Dominic's expression softened, and he reached out, his hand gently, resting on her arm. The touch sent a shock wave through Emily, making her heart race. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said, his voice low and comforting. But I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, taking in his words. She had never imagined she would be in this position, standing here with the most powerful man she had ever known, feeling something for him that went beyond the professional. She had always been the one to keep her distance, to stay in the shadows, but Dominic had a way of pulling her into the light, making her believe in something more. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what this means for me. Dominic smiled gently, his thumb brushing against her skin. I know, he said quietly, but you don't have to be scared. You don't have to figure it out right now. All I'm asking is for you to trust me. Emily looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she could trust him. She didn't have all the answers, but maybe it was time to stop running from the unknown. I'll try, she said softly. Dominic's smile widened slightly, and for a moment, there was a quiet peace between them. That's all I need, he said, his voice filled with reassurance. I'll be here whenever you're ready. As he stepped back, Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She didn't know what would happen next, but she was beginning to understand that she didn't have to have it all figured out. She could take her time, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. She watched Dominic leave the room, his presence lingering in the air long after he had gone. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to feel the weight of the decision that lay ahead, but she didn't feel as burdened as before. Whatever happened next, she knew she wouldn't be alone. She wasn't ready to say yes, but she wasn't saying no either. And that, in itself, was progress. The days that followed were a strange mix of anticipation and silence for Emily. She had spent her time organizing the mansion's day-to-day operations, still unable to shake the feeling that her world was slowly shifting. Dominic had given her the space to think, but each time she crossed paths with him, the weight of his presence reminded her that the decision she had to make was getting closer. It was undeniable. There was something between them, something that went beyond the lines of professional duty. But even as she felt the attraction between them, doubts crept into her mind. Was she really ready to step into his world, to be a part of something so much larger than herself? The decision felt like a mountain she couldn't quite climb, yet every day she felt herself moving closer to the edge, drawn in by Dominic's quiet insistence that she mattered, that she was capable of more. One evening, as she was finishing up the final tasks of the day, she found herself alone in the study. The house was quiet, and for a moment, Emily allowed herself to breathe. She couldn't deny that she was grateful for the space Dominic had given her, but she also couldn't ignore the growing tension between them. She heard the sound of footsteps echo through the hallway, and before she could turn, the door to the study opened. Dominic stepped inside, his eyes locking with hers immediately. He was dressed in his usual dark attire, but tonight, there was something different in the way he carried himself, more relaxed, but with an intensity that she could feel. Emily, he said softly, his voice low, can we talk? Her heart skipped a beat. Of course, she replied, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Dominic stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. There was something about the way he looked at her, as if he was waiting for her to make a move, to say something that would shift everything. Emily took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever was about to come. "I've been giving you the space you needed," he began, his tone serious yet caring. "But I want you to know that I haven't stopped thinking about you. About us." The words hung in the air, and Emily felt her chest tighten. She had known this conversation was coming, but hearing him say it out loud made it all the more real. "I don't want to rush you, Emily," he continued, his voice softening. "But I can't keep pretending like this isn't something I want. I want you by my side, in more ways than one." Emily swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had always kept her distance, always told herself that she could maintain control, but now, with Dominic standing before her, the lines between what was personal and what was professional seemed to blur. "I'm not sure I'm ready," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is all so overwhelming. I don't even know where to begin." Dominic stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers, the contact sending a shiver down her spine. "You don't have to have it all figured out," he said gently. "But I want you to know that you don't have to do this alone. I'm here, Emily, and I'll be here, no matter what you decide." His words, simple yet powerful, cut through the fog in her mind. She had been so focused on the fear, on the uncertainty, that she hadn't allowed herself to consider what it might feel like to trust him, to let go of the walls she had built around herself. She had spent so long playing it safe, keeping her distance, but maybe it was time to step into the unknown. "I don't know what this means for me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've never been a part of something like this. I don't know if I can handle it." Dominic smiled, a small, reassuring smile that softened the tension between them. "You don't have to handle it all at once. You're not alone in this, Emily. And you don't have to make any big decisions right now. Just know that I'm here for you, whenever you're ready." Emily looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, but for the first time, it didn't feel as overwhelming. The fear that had been holding her back seemed to lessen, replaced by a sense of possibility. She had spent so much time doubting herself, wondering if she was capable of stepping into Dominic's world, but now, standing here with him, she realized that maybe it was time to stop fighting it. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "But I trust you." Dominic's eyes softened as he reached out, taking her hand gently in his. "You don't have to be scared," he said quietly. "And you don't have to trust me all at once. We'll take it one step at a time. I'm not asking for anything more than that." Emily nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, she felt like she was ready to face whatever came next. Dominic's presence was a constant, but so was her own desire to move forward, to take that next step into the unknown. "I'll think about it," she said softly, meeting his gaze. Dominic smiled, his fingers gently squeezing hers. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As he turned to leave, Emily stood there, her heart still racing but her mind clearer than it had been in days. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was ready to face it, ready to make the choice that would shape her life from this point forward. The days following Dominic's offer were filled with uncertainty, but Emily found herself feeling strangely at peace. She had spent so much time overthinking, trying to control every little detail, but now, as she worked alongside him more and more, she began to understand something deeper. There was a quiet trust between them that neither of them had spoken of directly, but it was there. Emily had always been careful, keeping her emotions in check, never allowing herself to get too close to anyone. But now, with Dominic, that was starting to change. She found herself in his presence more often, each time the air between them growing more charged, but neither of them acknowledging it fully. She couldn't tell if he felt it too, but she knew there was something unspoken growing between them. One evening, as Emily was walking through the mansion, she noticed Dominic standing by the windows overlooking the garden, deep in thought. His broad shoulders were tense, his jaw clenched, but there was something vulnerable about him in that moment, something she hadn't seen before. She approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt, but he sensed her presence and turned to face her, his expression softening when their eyes met. "Emily," he said, his voice low, almost uncertain, a tone she rarely heard from him. "I'm glad you came. Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice gentle, sensing that something was off. Dominic took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "I've been thinking about everything. About what you said the other night," he began, stepping away from the window and walking closer to her. And I need to know if you're really ready for this. I don't want you to feel pressured into something you're not prepared for. His words hit Emily harder than she expected. She had always prided herself on being independent, but the weight of his concern made her realize that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been as ready as she thought. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted, the honesty surprising her as much as it seemed to surprise Dominic. This isn't just about a job anymore. It's about everything. And I'm scared. I've spent so long trying to keep control over my life, and now I feel like I'm losing it. Dominic's gaze softened, and for the first time, he reached out and took her hand in his. You're not losing control, Emily. You're gaining something more. I see what you're doing here, and I see you. I want you to know that no matter what, I'll be here, and I'll support you. His words were so simple, yet they carried a weight that made Emily's heart skip a beat. The sincerity in his voice was something she couldn't ignore, and in that moment, she realized how much she had come to rely on him, how much she trusted him. I don't know what this is between us, Emily said quietly, her voice trembling just a little, but I do know that I can't ignore it anymore. Dominic gave a small smile, his eyes filled with something soft, something that made Emily's heart flutter. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You don't need to figure it all out. Just take things one step at a time. We'll figure it out together. The warmth in his voice made Emily feel a sense of relief wash over her. She had spent so much time doubting herself, wondering if she was capable of stepping into this new world, but with Dominic, she finally felt like she wasn't alone in it. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax, to stop trying to control every little thing. I want to trust you, Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Dominic's eyes softened as he stepped closer. You can, and you don't have to rush. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. As he stood there, so close to her, Emily felt the distance between them close, but not in a way that felt overwhelming. It felt natural, as if they were meant to be there, meant to have this moment. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Dominic nodded, his hand gently brushing her cheek. You don't have to thank me, Emily. I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing this because I want to. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emily allowed herself to believe them. Maybe this was what she had been waiting for. Maybe this was the moment she needed to take that first step into Dominic's world. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to stop running. Let's take it slow, she said softly, meeting his gaze. One step at a time. Dominic smiled, his hand still resting on her cheek. That's all I ask. He took a step back, his hand lingering for a moment before he withdrew. I'll be here, whenever you're ready. As he left the room, Emily stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't scared. Dominic had given her the space she needed, and now, for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to move forward. Slowly, but with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. The mansion felt quieter now, but it wasn't an emptiness she feared. It was the quiet before something new, something she couldn't quite define but was ready to explore. And for once, Emily felt like she was standing on the edge of something she was willing to jump into. The days after their conversation felt like a slow unraveling for Emily. She had made a decision, one that felt right, one that she wasn't entirely sure she was ready for, but it was a decision that felt inevitable. Dominic had given her the space to breathe, to think, and now she understood something she hadn't fully grasped before. She wasn't just standing on the edge anymore. She was about to step into something that could change everything. The mansion had grown quieter over the past few days. The bustling energy of the staff, the noise of constant activity, all seemed to fade away as Emily moved through her days. It was as if the mansion itself was waiting for the decision to be made, as if it too knew that something important was about to happen. And when she had made her choice, it felt like the world around her had shifted. The moment Emily decided she was ready to take that first step, she found herself facing Dominic once more. It wasn't the grand moment she had imagined, but it was just as significant. She found him in the study, the same place they had shared so many conversations, both professional and personal. The fire crackled softly in the corner, and the room was bathed in the soft glow of evening light. Dominic was standing near the window, his back to her, lost in thought. She stood there for a moment, watching him, unsure of how to begin. When he turned, his eyes meeting hers, She felt the familiar pull that had drawn her to him from the start. He didn't say anything at first. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something that made Emily's heart skip a beat. "I've made my decision," she said softly, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Dominic's gaze softened, and he took a step closer, waiting for her to continue. "I'm ready," Emily continued, her words quieter this time. "I don't have all the answers, but I'm ready to take that step. Into your world. With you." There was a long pause, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily felt the weight of the words, of the decision she had just made. She had been afraid, unsure, but now there was a sense of clarity that filled the room. Dominic stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "Because once you step into this, there's no turning back." Emily nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep within her. She had never been more sure of anything in her life. "I'm sure," she whispered. "I want this. I want you." Dominic's expression softened even more, and for the first time, Emily saw the vulnerability that lay beneath his usual confident exterior. He reached out, taking her hand gently in his. The warmth of his touch sent a ripple of comfort through her, and she realized that no matter what the future held, she wasn't alone in it. "You don't have to do this alone," Dominic said, his voice filled with quiet reassurance. "I'm with you, every step of the way." The words, so simple, yet so profound, brought a sense of peace to Emily that she hadn't expected. She had spent so much time doubting herself, wondering if she was capable of stepping into this world, but now, with Dominic by her side, she felt like she could face anything. "Thank you," she whispered, looking up at him. Dominic smiled, a small but genuine smile, and pulled her closer, his hand gently resting on the back of her neck. "You've made the right choice, Emily, and we'll make it together." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the warmth of his embrace. Everything felt different now. The uncertainty, the fear, the doubts, all of it seemed to fade away as she stood there with him. She had made the choice, and now, there was nothing left to do but move forward. And for the first time, Emily felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, with Dominic, she would step into a world that was both new and familiar. The world that had once felt so intimidating was now within her reach. She wasn't just a part of his world. She was a part of something bigger, something that she couldn't yet fully understand but was willing to explore. Dominic's presence filled her with a sense of purpose that she had never felt before, and as he pulled her in for a gentle kiss, Emily realized that this was the beginning of something new, a journey they would take together. With that kiss, the uncertainty and the fear melted away, leaving only the certainty that they would face whatever came next, side by side. The future was still unclear, but for the first time, Emily wasn't afraid to take that step forward. She was ready for whatever lay ahead, and with Dominic by her side, she knew she would be able to handle it all. If you love captivating and heartwarming romance stories, this is the perfect tale to dive into. Follow the journey of Emily, a woman who finds herself at a crossroads in her life as she is swept into the world of a powerful and enigmatic mafia boss, Dominic. As their paths intertwine, their connection grows into something neither of them expected. The story unfolds with moments of tension, trust, and undeniable chemistry. From the moment they first meet, the line between business and personal becomes blurred, and Emily faces the challenge of deciding whether to step into Dominic's world or continue to keep her distance. As the relationship between them deepens, Emily realizes that this is no ordinary romance. In this world of danger and power, can they truly find happiness together? This is one of those romance stories where emotions run high, and every decision matters. The story takes you through moments of self-discovery, personal growth, and emotional vulnerability. It is a captivating journey where two people from different worlds come together to forge something beautiful, despite the obstacles they face. With passion, vulnerability, and the promise of something more, this romance story will keep you on the edge of your seat. Through every twist and turn, Emily and Dominic will show you that love can overcome even the most daunting challenges. For those who crave romance stories filled with intense emotions and powerful connections, this one will resonate deeply. The slow burn of their relationship and the uncertainty of what lies ahead make for a gripping tale that pulls you in with every chapter. So if you are looking for your next romance story that will tug at your heartstrings, this one will not disappoint.